Jack Posobiec. For those who may not know, don't go into too much detail, but what was your intelligence military experience for the U.S. government?
I worked as an intelligence analyst, so started as an IS and enlisted in the Navy, and then went on to the officer side, conducted multiple deployments, predominantly through ONI and DIA of the three-letter agencies, so Office of Naval Intelligence and Defense Intelligence Agency in various capacities, mostly to East Asia, but then also one deployment for about a year down at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, as a counterterrorism analyst and actually working in the interrogation cell at Guantanamo. Actually, when I was doing that, that was through Guantanamo. My time there was a DIA mission. Have worked with special forces and various capacities as well for different operations, and really predominantly on the collection side as well as the analysis side for intelligence. Obviously, I have to be a little bit vague, but that's what I did for almost a decade of my life.
It offers trustworthiness to some extent, although some people say once intelligence, always
intelligence.
intelligence.
Poso is a Fed.
When you start becoming part of a movement that is sort of outing the agencies in which you worked, do you lose your contacts?
I think officially they hate me and have denounced me and, all that stuff. And, one of the reasons that I'm not there is I was filing whistleblower reports even before I left. And they didn't take too kindly to that. And then, of course, as you can imagine, being in the intelligence community in 2016 was not a good place to be a Trump supporter. And so, they came after me the same way they came after President Trump and so many more. And I don't even really talk about it because it's just nothing compared to what they did to so many other more high-profile cases. There are still people that will come up to me at events and then we'll trade contact info, and they say, look, man, we're pulling for you. We got our heads down, and we see what you're doing out there, and we really support you. The one thing that I do hear from people more than anything else is that it's gotten 10 times worse since I left in 2019, and it's just gotten so much worse.
It's supposed to be something of an ideological purge so that these agencies serve at the behest of, if you want to call it the Democrat Party or the Uniparty, they basically cleanse out and purge out everybody who would be a dissenting voice, or at least a responsible voice. Right. You and Joshua Lysak wrote this book. First of all, how do you get started? How long did it take?
When Joshua and I put it together, so basically, people remember we were doing our other book, Unhumans, and it was this anti-communist book. Did very well. It went New York Times, and we're very blessed with that. All of a sudden, as we were even sort of in the press tour for that book, somebody takes a shot at Donald Trump and almost takes his head off on live television on July 13th, 2024 at 6:11 p.m. And again, on September 15th, you have this other situation with this guy who's a Ukrainian foreign fighter. We were the ones who tied him directly to the Azov battalion. We were the ones who broke that story in the course of researching this book. Funny enough, so Joshua reached out to me and said, Jack, we should write a book about this. And I said, you're crazy. You're crazy. We don't have time. There's no way. We just did one book. The book did really well. Why would we put ourselves through that torture and suffering yet again, especially with the election looming and all of this? And he said, Jack, it's just too important. I think we have to do this. And I was like, well, all right, let's see if we can. And then I get a message from Tony Lyons, who is the publisher of Skyhorse, and he goes, Jack, you and Joshua should do another book. And I'm like, man, I've got all of this, and it happened. I said, what, we're just going to do it. It was a lot of sleepless nights, and we wrote it over the course of about a month. And I'm in the process of recording the audiobook right now. I'm just putting kind of the finishing touches on the audiobook version for Bulletproof.
Again, the first question is, how many official recognized assassination attempts have there been on Trump?
We include that in the book. There was one in Vegas and another one in Dayton, Ohio, where it was, both were situations where someone tried to rush the stage. And in one of the situations, it was the Vegas one, the man actually attempted to grab the firearm from a Secret Service officer and then rush the stage with it. So armed themselves with the Secret Service firearm and then rush the stage, use the firearm to then kill President Trump. Obviously, they were both stopped. When we talk about assassination attempts, I think largely, and President Trump has mentioned in a couple interviews recently, but he mentioned two. So in his mind, there were two that involved instances where there was an individual waiting out with a sniper rifle. One instance, of course, Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13th. And then the second, of course, being September 15th at the West Palm Beach golf club where you have this, as we were talking about, the aforementioned Ryan Wesley Routh, who was waiting at the 6th hole while President Trump was already at the 5th green. So what was one hole away from having President just a couple hundred yards from within range of his SKS Kalashnikov rifle that he was lying in wait for. So those are the two. People need to understand that there are active assassination threats against President Trump right now that are ongoing. And so Matt Gaetz came on my program on Human Events a couple of weeks ago now and said there are 5 active assassination teams that he heard of through the Department of Homeland Security. He said 3 are foreign, 2 are domestic. Then you have this DOJ letter that the DOJ releases from Ryan Wesley Routh. And we all know that the FBI and the DOJ are more than happy to redact letters from the public whenever they want to. So then the flip side, you would think the inverse would have to also be true, that when they want something released, they're doing so deliberately. Mm-hmm. And the letter that they released from Ryan Wesley Routh was with this dead man's letter that he had given to a friend saying, this attempt was not successful, but someone else can be successful. And if you are, there will be a $150,000 bounty. Through our reporting, we've heard that money that he's referring to may actually refer to the bounty that's been put out by Iran and the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, on President Trump. So I don't know that if Routh was directly communicating with Iran or he had just heard about this through some sort of intermediary, but we've seen he was traveling between Kiev and Istanbul and Taiwan and Taipei on a sort of, it almost feels like a CIA global tour of the places that they were at, even talking about Afghani foreign fighters and trying to bring them over to Ukraine, which is a classic CIA move, that you would take foreign fighters that have been trained and then move them from one proxy war to another. I mean, this goes back to the Halcyon CIA days of the 1960s and 70s, knocking off regimes in the third world. Something that I've also been told is that there have been other instances of threats to President Trump's motorcade, as well as, and I think this one has gotten quite public, President Trump's aircraft, that people are very concerned about, and things that we don't even fully know about publicly, both involving not just suspicious individuals, but even also, believe it or not, drones, advanced drones that have been targeting both the motorcade and the aircraft. And that's why President Trump's campaign has currently actually requested to the Biden administration for military escorts for their aircraft and vehicle. We are getting down sort of the first draft of history of what happened, separating the fact and fiction, but we're also dealing with something that is ongoing. And so what we aim to do with the Bulletproof book and this iteration of it, and there's going to be more iterations as we learn more. This is very much an ongoing investigation. And as we dig through and penetrate the layers on this, I believe that we will find instances of what's really going on. These weren't just attempts. These were failed hits.
How do you even trust who you have been given for protective detail if it cannot be anything but the most insidious level of corruption at the highest rank? So there's no other way to view this?
Essentially what we're seeing is this sort of intentional neglect is how we put it. And these questions of why wasn't there a specific site lead agent set for the Butler rally? Why were there no agents that did a last walkthrough of the area prior to President Trump taking the stage? Why was there no Overwatch coverage of the specific AGR building that Thomas Matthew Crooks, by the way, not just crawled onto, but was jumping around from rooftop to rooftop in broad daylight, 6 p.m., 6:04 p.m., and I should say to 6:05 p.m., because at 6:04 p.m. is when you have Officer Greg Nickel of the local SWAT team actually drops coverage, his Overwatch coverage, he's in the higher AGR building in the sniper's nest, where he's supposed to be looking down at the AGR building and then later throughout the crowd, leaves coverage because supposedly he hears of this suspicious individual, but rather than wait for a local patrol to come by, he decides to take it upon himself to leave the sniper's nest, leave the window, and we've got the photos from the actual team. And if you flip to the back of the book, you'll see it there. The actual team report afterwards, the building is in full view.
This was a video that was circulated by, I forget which, it was a member of the government who shows up there and opens up the window, and you see the roof from where the shots were taken.
Right there.
And then some people, I was like, I watched that and I said, that can't be right. But it is. It's beyond anything. Who was it that put out Ruth's dead man's letter? Was that the Department of Defense?
DOJ.
What non-malicious explanation is there for that? Like, in my mind, they suppressed the transgender kids manifesto for as long as they could. To put this out there, it's nothing more than, and will be read as nothing but, a call to action for anybody who is so inclined. What non-malicious, legally justified excuse could there be for them to put that out at that time, totally unredacted?
I don't have one. The reason that they released the letter at all, or at least entered the letter in court, because this is all going to trial, by the way. He will go to trial on November 15th, and they've pulled Judge Eileen Cannon. And remember, this is the same judge from the Mar-a-Lago documents case, who's known, by the way, for being very tough for when it comes to the evidentiary threshold for various things. She isn't interested in sitting there and going back and forth. She wants to get into the data. One of the issues, though, that I saw this kind of circulating in legal circles was people saying, well, how are they going to charge him with attempted assassination when he doesn't get a shot off? He didn't have Trump in view. And of course, he could argue that he was sitting there trying to protect Donald Trump or one of these things. How do you actually determine his intent? Which, of course, I think we all get from a common sense basis is, kind of silly, but you understand why a defense lawyer would attempt to do that. What they were trying to do to establish with the letter is establish intent. Obviously, okay, got it, sure. But you easily could have redacted the part about the bounty. Anyone could have redacted. It would have made sense to redact it. The fact that they didn't redact it, again, shows a willful, and this is the point, intentional negligence is a form of malice. Intentional negligence is a form of not caring, is a form of not being interested in the safety of your subject, not being interested in the safety of those involved.
I saw no good faith reason for them to release that letter at that time. I mean, bring it all the way back to the incompetence. It's systematic where there's no order. It's just make it so chaotic, make it so incompetent that eventually something will happen. When they came out and said, look, that wasn't in our perimeter, that building, the AGR building. I was like, well, then your perimeter wasn't good. It's not like, oh, that wasn't in our secure perimeter, therefore that's why we weren't looking at it. It was within the vicinity. It should have been. There have been no further sanctions or consequences for any of the agents involved above and beyond five were placed on administrative leave?
So they've been placed on administrative leave and assigned to administrative duties. One of the individuals that we're told was the person who was assigned essentially the quasi-site lead, who was a female agent with, this just came out yesterday, she only had 4 years of experience inside the entire Secret Service. She had just graduated from the service academy that goes for the Secret Service in 2020. So actually less than 4 full years on the job. She was the one assigned to the Butler rally. And people have heard, of course, that the Secret Service's drone did not work, which also would have included counter-drone technology. And so, again, Thomas Matthew Crooks, not only did he fly a drone, and this is something we put together in the book, not only did he fly a drone at the rally, he also had working IEDs at the rally. And we don't know why he didn't, but had he so chosen, he easily could have used his drone to fly those IEDs directly into that rally on the drone, kamikaze style, like we've seen across the battlefield from Russia to Ukraine, and killed far more rally goers than just one, killed President Trump, and there would have been almost no way for them to stop this coming from that AGR building. So we were told, just real quick, we were told in the New York Times, it was revealed that the agent who was supposed to be in charge of the drone technology that day had virtually no experience on the program other than taking one online course, and actually spent several hours on the phone with the commercial tech support on customer support, trying to figure out how to get the drone in the air. And I've been to Butler twice now, once for research for the book, and then again when President Trump came back. It's not a big area. It's just really, that's one of the biggest things that people need to understand, and I didn't understand until I was there myself. You know, you see the pictures, you see the aerial overheads, and which we studied in great detail. We provide various points of this imagery and these maps in the book. But when you go there and walk the ground yourself, you realize it's actually quite small. I mean, they say 140 yards from the AGR building to President Trump's, but we actually, when we went there without the rally, without the crowds and the stands and the fencing, I mean, it's just one field. You know, I was running around. My kids were there, and we were, you know, you could make that run in a couple of minutes. It's very close.
So no drones, layered incompetence, quite clearly. Where in the hell is this 20-year-old loner learning how to make IEDs? Because there was some discussion as to whether or not there were in fact explosives, whether or not he had them in the car. He's building IEDs, and he doesn't have a book. And if he does have a book, he bought it or he rented it from a library. And if he didn't have a book, he's looking online, and there's track. And we know nothing of that yet, where he learned this stuff.
We have reporting that he may have actually purchased these plans, because again, this is not, it's not a pipe bomb. This wasn't pressure cookers like the Boston bombers in 2012. No, this was, 2013, that this was, it was something new. He was actually using ammo cans and using that to make his mix. And then he had detonators that would have set off the explosive substance within the ammo cans that were then linked to a remote, which of course the FBI says, and again, this is FBI says, so take that with a grain of salt. They claimed that the remote was set in the wrong position for it to go off, which of course, you know, he obviously could have easily just switched to the other position and at any time. And but they said these were active. They were active IEDs. These were not inert. These were not decoys or, you know, some kind of J6 training device or implement. No, these were the real thing. And the idea that that we have reporting that one of the theories is that he was using so he would use these online encrypted accounts that he had based in various countries around the world to order various implements for his ammunition and for many things that he was using online to sort of build these different devices. And so the theory that was going around in the national security space was that he was using those as well to mask his movements and mask his traffic online, and potentially communicated online to get the blueprints basically for these devices, or, you know, the anarchist cookbook level of understanding the recipe for how to build this, and then downloaded that and then was using those and testing those prior to this event. And we have information that's in the very back here in our, you know, skipping ahead to our independent report. So this book essentially establishes the first iteration of the report, and we do intend to have more because we want this to be an ongoing investigation, and the book sales will go to support that. We have reason to believe that when he was conducting testing with these IEDs that he was not alone.